All right, welcome to today's webinar. My name is Sarah Shadid from Ross Strategic, and I act as support to US EPA's Office of Water. You are currently tuned in to listen to the webinar, Enabling the Water Resources Utility of the Future, Creating the Water Workforce of the Future. I'm going to go ahead and give us a few minutes while we wait for attendees to join the call, and we'll begin in just a moment. All right, welcome to those of you that have just joined the call. Again, you've tuned in to the EPA webinar, Enabling the Water Resources Utility of the Future, Creating the Water Workforce of the Future. I am going to turn it over to Jim Horn over at the EPA.
Thank you very much, Sarah, and thanks to everybody that is logged in today. We really appreciate your interest in this topic. Again, my name is Jim Horn. I'm the Sustainable Utilities Program Manager at the EPA Office of Wastewater Management here in Washington, D.C. In addition to Sarah and the other support team, I also want to recognize my colleague, Hannah Abate, who is also on the line, and Hannah has done a lot of the work to help put this webinar together. So thank you so much for doing that, Hannah. And Hannah will have some brief closing remarks at the end of the webinar. So as you can see here, this is part of a webinar series that our office at EPA is sponsoring. And before I talk about the speakers, I think I should tell you a little bit about why we're interested in this. Water workforce issues, as many of you know, are now probably the #1 topic with a huge number of utilities across the water sector in the United States. Small, medium, large, water and wastewater, it doesn't matter. Everybody is facing workforce challenges. Some of those driven by expected retirements, just many of those also driven by competition from other sectors for people that we want to bring into the industry. So it is a huge challenge, a huge issue for everybody in the sector, including EPA. I've been at EPA a long time, and we have never had the kind of top-level management support for water workforce that we have today. We are expected to issue what we call a workforce initiative, hopefully in April of this year. And this webinar series is going to be one of the commitments that EPA makes. That initiative, when it comes out, will be made available to everybody on this call. But as you will see, the initiative will talk about a wide range of actions, not only that EPA will take, but that other federal agencies will take, that utilities will take, that professional associations, like all the associations listed on this slide. So it will be truly a collaborative effort, and we look forward to making it final in April, and we will make sure that all of you get a copy. So the bottom line message is it's a big deal here for the right reasons. The two most important reasons that I would say is, #1, we really promote the idea of sustainable utilities here at EPA. And as we all know, a utility can't be sustainable. It will not be sustainable without a sustainable, well-motivated, highly trained, and motivated workforce. And one of the big challenges that utilities are facing is, how do you build that pipeline for the future? How do you reach out to people that you would like to attract, not only to the industry as a whole, but also to your organization as well? The other issue, the other reason I think is obvious. We all have collaborated so many times over the years and put so much infrastructure in the ground. 40, 50, 60 billion dollars worth just of federal dollars alone. We need to protect that infrastructure. And without a trained, motivated workforce, it's not going to happen. And water quality, the safe and clean water that we've come to enjoy in this country will just not be sustained. So many good reasons for everybody to invest time and effort in this whole workforce issue. So again, we're delighted to be hosting this webinar series. This is the second webinar that we have sponsored. Sarah, if we haven't sent out the link to the first webinar, we can certainly do that after this one. But this is our second, and we really are today talking about this notion of how you build that pipeline. How do you reach out in this particular case through the efforts of utilities and organizations like Project WET to reach students, reach kids, reach people in the community that you want to educate about the importance of water, but also the importance of a potential career in water. You know, it needs to start at a young age. And as you get people understanding sort of what you do out there, what this whole notion of water utilities is about, you do that at a young age and build up their understanding, not only for your own sort of selfish reasons, because you want to attract them hopefully to your own organization, but I think it just builds a better and more informed population out there. So we are really delighted to have a fine group of speakers today. In a few minutes, you'll hear from Julia Beck, who is the Vice President of Networks for the Project WET Foundation. Project WET provides a lot of technical assistance and help to utilities around the country to help them develop educational programs and outreach programs focusing on students. Also, April Lopez, who is a water conservation education specialist with El Paso Water. Thank you, April, for joining us. El Paso Water is a great example, and we were very happy that they were part of this webinar. Water down there along the border is a very scarce commodity, and El Paso has got sort of a nationally recognized water reuse program, and it's really an aggressive program in place through people like April and others to really help people understand the importance of water conservation. Finally, Cindy Bushy, I hope I pronounced that right, Cindy, who's an environmental education manager with the Boise Watershed Education Center in Boise, Idaho. Cindy is also will describe her work with Project WET in her community to help educate people and also work with the local utility in Boise. So as Hannah Abate and I learned, I would say 6 months ago, there are many utilities out there that have got these really fine education programs. And we want to highlight those today, bring those to your attention, and also have you understand better other resources that are out there that you may be able to take advantage as you build your own programs. So next slide, sir. So let me turn it over to Sarah Shadid here for a minute about some webinar logistics, and then we'll get rolling. Sarah, back to you.
Got it. Thanks, Jim. Yeah, so just a few notes on today's webinar. The first is that all participants are going to be in listen-only mode. That means that if you have questions for the speakers throughout the presentations, and we're anticipating that you will, go ahead and submit those questions through the Q&A box, which is here in red on your webinar menu. We'll keep the list of those questions, and then at the end of the webinar, we're gonna have a lot of opportunity for question and answer. So just know as you type those in, we are keeping track of them, and we will loop back to it at the end of the webinar. The second note is that the webinar is being recorded today. And so we will be sending out a recording of the webinar as well as the full slide deck to all participants and registrants for the call. So if any interesting information comes up for you, just know that you'll have that as a reference. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and move us into a short number of polls before we start the webinar, just to kind of see who we have on the line. So our first poll here is, please indicate the sector that you work in. And I'm going to go ahead and launch that poll right now. We have a lot of participants on the call today, and we want to know who we are talking to. So go ahead, we'll give you a few minutes to fill that out. Looks like about 60% of participants were quick to the draw and have already responded. But if you have not yet responded, go ahead and get those answers in, and I will close it in just a moment. All right. It looks like about 27% of participants noted that they're from a utility. We have 37% from state or local government, 11% from federal government, 6% from consultant sector, 6% in academia, and then 13% listed as other. If you are one of the participants that noted other, go ahead and type in what sector you represent so that we can get a better picture of who we have on the line. All right, I'm going to go ahead and move us over to the next two polls. So this is number 1, how familiar are you with Project WET? And 2, have you been involved in K through 12 or teacher education in your community in the past? Looks like we have quite a few rapid responses. But again, if you have not yet gotten your response in, go ahead and respond to the poll, and we will close that poll in just a few moments. All right, so it looks like we have a lot of participants that are calling in today because they don't have any familiarity with Project WET and want to learn more. So 56% of respondents said no familiarity with Project WET. We have 29% that say they're somewhat familiar and 15% that are very familiar. On poll number 2, asking about people's involvement with K through 12 or teacher education, we have 33% saying they've never been involved with K through 12 or teacher education, 26% saying they're regularly involved, 21% occasionally involved, and 20% listing as once or twice. So we have a wide variety of attendees on the call today. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Jim to introduce our first speaker. And Jim, if you are speaking, we are not able to hear you.
Okay.
I can hear you now.
Okay. Am I okay now, Sarah? Hello?
Loud and clear. Yep.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. Thanks again, Sarah, and it's my pleasure to introduce Julia Beck, who is the Vice President of Networks for Project WET. We first met Julia, I don't know, 3 or 4 months ago after Hannah and I had talked with one of the utilities that was familiar with Project WET. So, Julia, thank you very much. I appreciate the work that you're doing, and we're glad to have you on the webinar today. So, over to you.
Great. Thanks, Jim. I want to say thank you so much to Jim and Hannah and the EPA Office of Wastewater for inviting us to be on this webinar and being able to share Project WET and water education with all of you. It sounds like there's a lot of people that are not familiar with us. So that's a really fun audience for us to be able to talk to today. If you're wondering what the Vice President of Networks is, hopefully that will become much clearer as I go through this and talk to you about Project WET and our networks of partners. Next slide. So Project WET advances water education to understand global challenges and inspire local solutions. And next slide, we had a video to show you. Unfortunately, there were some technical difficulties. So I highly recommend, if you get the chance, to either go to our website or check out this YouTube video about how water education impacts the world. And it's all about Project WET and our mission. But basically, you know, you'll get a good feel for us as I go through this. And we develop hands-on fun activities for educators or for people to teach others about water, and that's all topics of water. Next slide. So hopefully I don't have to ask anybody who is on this webinar today, why do water education? But let's quickly chat about why we should do water education. Next. So some statistics here. This is some research that was actually conducted a decade ago now, but is still incredibly relevant. Less than half of US respondents were very familiar with 14 related water terms, such as groundwater. In South Carolina, only 28% could identify the correct definition of a watershed, and I can promise you that that is not only in South Carolina. Also in North Carolina, only 38% of respondents knew that stormwater flows into the nearest waterway, and 30% incorrectly thought that stormwater is treated prior to discharge. And that is certainly not unique to North Carolina. Anytime I work with students doing stormwater lessons, they pretty much all of them think that it is treated before it gets discharged. Next slide. More recently, surveys showed that only 21% of people know very well where their water comes from, and almost half of people under 30 did not understand where their water comes from. So all of this is to say that there is a real lack of education and people understanding their watershed, where their water comes from, where it goes. And so there's a real need for that. And it starts, in school, but then it goes up into adulthood as well, because adults still don't understand these issues. Next slide. And this is shocking, really, because water is part of everything, right? Again, hopefully I don't have to tell anybody on this call that, but it's not just direct water uses, right? It's not just the fact that we need water to survive through drinking and cooking and washing, but it's also these virtual or indirect water uses that are really important. So we need water for everything in our lives, from the cell phone that you use today, to the bicycle or car you took to work, to the clothes you put on, the computer you're using. Water was involved in all of that, right? It's part of everything. And that's really important when we're talking about the workforce. Next. So why Project WET? Why did EPA ask us to come here and talk to you today? Next. And we've been around for 35 years. So we started back in 1984 in North Dakota and quickly expanded throughout the United States, and we're actually now global in 75 countries around the world. And the reason that we work so well and that we've been around for this long with people continuing to use us and we're continuing to grow is that we're fun, right? Our activities are fun. And research shows that people learn better when they're having fun. They retain more information when they're having fun. And so all of our activities are these hands-on, fun activities, not only for the students or learners, but also for the people that are teaching them. Next. And also, when we're talking about job readiness, our activities are addressing the skills that professionals want to see, the skills that they're hiring for. And those skills are thinking critically and independently, problem solving, collaborating and working together, being able to communicate, and then also persevering, right? So our activities, they're all this inquiry-based method, which means this learning through discovery method. We never give the answers. The students, the learners have to find the answers for themselves as they go through the activity, and they discover the answers for themselves. And so all of these skills are things that workers look for, right, that employers look for. Next. And recently, studies are coming out showing that children are more likely to choose a career by doing rather than being told. For example, children are more likely to become a scientist if they're doing science, rather than just being told, you should become a scientist. And also, there's a lot of information out there showing professional mentorship is really important. So recently, this one was from Phillips Charitable Foundation. They have a great article on it, but there's other articles as well out there that show when you can bring professionals into an educational setting and show them the real world relevance of the topic, then it's more likely that students will want to follow that career path. And so for us, our activities are all about real world relevance. And so that's why it's a great partnership between educators. And in this case, we're talking about utility workers. Next. And the other reason that people really like to use our activities and like to partner with us in their education programs is because of our core beliefs. These are the beliefs that we are grounded in and founded in. Water is for all water users. We do not discriminate and we do not have an agenda. Everybody uses water. Everybody needs water. Water connects us all. Same thing, right? Everything on earth needs water. Water resources are managed, which I shouldn't have to tell this group. It looks like there's a lot of utility and government workers here. And then water depends on personal responsibility and action. So ensuring we have clean and safe water today and into the future. Next. We educate on all topics of water. So water A to Z, and that includes chemical and physical properties, the quality of water, quantity, so water conservation, understanding watersheds and watershed health, water sanitation and hygiene, and of course, water systems as well. So where your water comes from, where does it go? Next. And the Project WET Foundation has several different aspects. Most of what I'll be talking about today is our networks. And we have 68 partners here in the US that use our methodology and our materials to implement their own Project WET water programs. But we also have some other partners that I just want to mention, and those are our WASH, or corporate and professional partners. And these are our partners that engage in these customized programs, this third aspect. And I mention that because this may interest some of you. You know, these are customized programs that focus either on specific topics, watersheds, or employee engagement. So those are also some options we have. Next. We are actually a very small staff of people. We're located in Bozeman, Montana, and we have a huge impact around the world. And so the way that we do this is through our train the trainer model and working through our partners. In 2018 alone, we educated 2.5 million people globally and 820,000 people in the US just through our network of partners here in the US. And the way that we did that is, you know, through this cascading train the trainer model. So we have 68 partners here who in 2018 trained close to 85 educators, new educators just in 2018 in how to teach water education. And then we estimate we have 26 or 27,000 educators that are currently using Project WET to teach about water around the US, educating around 800,000 students a year. So it's, we have a huge reach with very few people just using this model. Next. And not all of our educators that we train are formal. I mean, formal educators are a huge part of what we do, but we also have a huge sector of non-formal educators that our partners train. And this is where these utilities, corporations, government, museums, nature centers, that's where you come in. So it's not just for formal teachers. This is for anybody who wants to educate about water. Next. Our program here in the US centers around the Project WET curriculum and activity guide. This guide requires a workshop, so this is where you'll get trained in how to do Project WET. And you get 64 activities on all topics of water. So if there's something you want to teach about, it's probably in there. All of them are hands-on lessons employing this learning through discovery where students figure out the answers for themselves. And they're all correlated to education standards. And this is really important because if you're going to if you want to work with schools, formal schools, then teachers need to be able to justify using these activities, justify bringing you in and teaching water education. So this is how we do that. They're able to justify using Project WET because they know that it's going to meet their teaching standards. And then, of course, all of our activities are vetted by educators and experts. Next. Just wanted to show that we have a bunch of other topics, specific topics for educator guides. Probably the most important is our early childhood. So if you're ever doing anything with preschool or kindergarten, maybe not relating to the workforce, but relating to water, you know, start young with pre-K, and then these other topics as well. Next. And we have these Kids in Discovery series. We call them Kids Books. This is for students, upper elementary, middle school, to work through. They're really great for utilities or professionals to leave stuff behind. So if you go into a classroom or if you have a community event, you might want to pass out the stormwater one, or you might want to pass out watershed conservation or watershed protection. So these are nice options. You can go to our store or our website to learn more. Next. And finally, if you're in a Spanish-speaking place, you may want to look into some of our Spanish language options. Next. So before I turn it back over so you guys can actually hear what our partners and colleagues are doing on the ground, I just want to mention a few other people who are not on the call today, or they're here listening actually, which is fantastic, but are not speaking today, and you might want to get in touch with them. And the first is New Hampshire. The New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services is our official partner. Laura Hooper is the coordinator there, and just at the end of last year, she did a workshop pairing educators and water utility workers together in a mentorship program, and advertised specifically for that. And she said it went really, really well. You know, the training just happened, so we're going to see how the rollout goes. But if you want to learn more about that, or you're a utility that's interested in doing something like this, get in touch with me or ask Laura how it went. Next. Our Ohio partner is the Ohio EPA, actually. And of course, then they're interested in addressing shortage of water utility operators. And they do this through water professional associations and career tech high school centers. They've also developed online career pathways for students and parents, which they actually outline the high school classes needed for particular jobs. And that includes water operators and utility directors. So you might want to get in touch with them if you want to learn more about this. Dennis Clement is our coordinator there. And they have a program with Project WET called Who Works for Water that specifically addresses, you know, this need for water workers with students. And for those of you that are familiar with Project WET, I saw a few of you out there, they use our activity Urban Waters and then talk about the different careers that are associated with that, different aspects of the urban watershed. Next. And then finally, South Carolina, our partner there is the Greenville County Soil and Water Conservation District. They do lunch and learns for local water utilities. That could be a really great place for you to start if you're not quite able to do a workshop yet or just want to learn more about what our local partners can do with you. They also do some water quality education and rain barrel career days and internships. So next. If you would like to find out how to get in touch with your local Project WET partner, please go to our website where we are. You can type in your state or your area, and then you should be able to find your local partner's contact information. If you don't see events happening right now, just contact them because most of them are not on our map. And then of course, next, you can always contact me and I can put you in touch with the appropriate person. But for now, I'm going to turn it back over to Jim. And again, I want to say thank you. And I want to say thank you to Cindy and April, who are going to share how they use Project WET and share their amazing programs. We have such an amazing partner network out there, and I hope that all of you can take advantage of that. So thank you.
Thank you, Julia. That was excellent. Very nice overview presentation, and I was really impressed by the range of activities you laid out. It just seems to me that the teacher community can benefit so much from, you know, getting advice on how to really teach, if you will. They don't work at utilities, but they are the people that really interact with kids every day. And so I really appreciate all the work that you folks are doing and this great network you've got. So I guess we're on to our next speaker, April Lopez, who is a water conservation specialist with El Paso Water. And as I said, water is precious everywhere, but I guess it's extra special precious down along the border. And so we really appreciate you being here with us today, April. And as your presentation says, this is all about building the career pipeline, which is really what we need to do across the country. So let me turn it over to you. Hello.
Water. Hello?
Yep, over to you, April.
Can you hear me?
Hello.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Is this April Lopez?
Yes, it is. All right.
Hi, April. Over to you.
All right, so good afternoon, everyone. My name is April Lopez. I am a water conservation specialist with El Paso Water. And today I will be discussing how public education inspires and builds those interests, making that connection with students and building a career pipeline, especially within a water utility. Next. So first off, let me tell you a little bit about our city, the city of El Paso, Texas. Located in the northern extreme of the Chihuahuan Desert, the city lies on the frontier of 3 states, 2 countries, and 3 diverse water supplies. The region consists of El Paso, Texas, Ciudad Juarez, Mexico, and Las Cruces, New Mexico. So El Paso is nicknamed the Sun City, and that's well earned because El Paso enjoys an average daily temperature of almost 70 degrees and over 300 days of sunshine each year. Next. All right, so with its sunny days and mild temperature, El Paso is truly a desert oasis, but because rainfall averages only about 8 inches per year, water conservation is essential to the city's economy, environment, and quality of life. With a unique diversified water resources portfolio that include shared resources such as the Rio Grande and 2 underground aquifers. Conservation, water reuse, desalination are current, but we are looking into groundwater storage and recovery, advanced water purification and importation. And this is why public education is key, not only to understand the need to develop resources and infrastructure, but to also gain the public support. Next. El Paso Water has a multi-pronged approach to reduce consumption. They include mandatory restrictions in the form of a city ordinance, supply side conservation to reduce system leaks, financial incentives, but more importantly is public education. And this is to increase awareness of regional water supplies and to gain the support of conservation programs and the development of new water supplies. Next. El Paso Water initiated the conservation program back in 1991 with adoption of the city ordinance. Consumption per capita per day has been reduced 35%. The ordinance establishes water restrictions, the use of efficient pumping devices, landscape restrictions for commercial sites. And over the years, we've had a number of incentives and rebate programs that yielded success, including turf rebate replacement program, a cash for your commode, free low flow shower heads, a washing machine rebate, and central refrigerated air rebate. But because we've reached our goal and have maintained it, we have ended the rebates and incentive programs. However, public education continues to be the forefront of our strategic planning. Our programs today focus primarily on education and public outreach. We reach nearly 40,000 students every year through our Tech H2O Center programs and our outreach efforts. Next. All right, so there we have the Tech H2O Center. That's where I work. That's where my office is located. We are very fortunate to have a dedicated education center to offer a public and variety of programs aimed at increasing awareness in how we manage regional water supplies to meet demand. All right, so we want the public to value water, understand the infrastructure needs, provide water and wastewater services for our desert communities. The Tech H2O Center, I'm sorry, can you go back? Awesome. All right, so the Tech H2O Water Resource Learning Center became a host facility back in 2008, the same year that we opened. So to offer the public Project WET to educators and students. Project WET offers a wide variety of activities and lessons that fit our mission in a fun and engaging way. And the Tech H2O Center is adjacent to the world's largest inland desalination plant, and that is our Kay Bailey Hutchinson desalination. Next. All right, so how does Project WET help El Paso Water educate the public? Project WET activities are customizable to a wide range of audiences to demonstrate and present topics relevant to our strategic plan by promoting careers in the water industry and addressing the need to communicate how we manage a wide portfolio of water resources. These topics include, for instance, we have surface water. We can do an activity, this activity, Snow and Tell. Groundwater, we have a grave mistake. If we want to talk about water resources and advanced water purification, Project WET really helps us dismiss the myth of toilet to tap. And a good activity that we utilize is urban water, because we discuss water moving from community to community, right? We're talking about the urban water cycle, right? Desert ecology, activity Humpty Dumpty or Invaders would be very helpful for that topic. Water quality, we have water quality, Ask the Bugs. Water demand and conservation, we have the activity Money Down the Drain. And that's a really good activity to do during Fix a Leak Week. Wastewater, you know, a very famous and popular activity is called Super Bowl Surge, and students absolutely love that activity. We actually encourage them to come in wearing their favorite jersey. All right, next. All right, so how does El Paso Water implement Project WET in its educational efforts? So field trips. Field trips include a hands-on activity that is correlated to the Texas TEEC standards, providing educators a whole wide menu of options for activities to fit their teaching needs. The correlation to TEECs allows teachers to justify the field trip to their administrators. And what has also been helping us is by reaching out to those educators and those principals and making those connections with our regional schools by attending public partners in education meetings. Because oftentimes we can find teachers that say, well, water, that's 4th grade, that's the water cycle. Well, then I ask them, I follow up with, okay, well, what is it that you're teaching? Okay, well, we're teaching about ecosystems. Great. We can incorporate that water conservation message by doing a ecosystem activity. And that's how we've been able to guide teachers here. Next. By taking the show on the road, staff uses project activities in classroom presentations to make our visit more memorable and interactive. Outreach is not limited to schools, but also at citywide events. We have a very good volunteer program where we train volunteers to conduct or demonstrate Project WET activities. Additionally, El Paso Water has 3 big annual signature events that are open to the public, attracting a large number of attendees per event. Staff and volunteers demonstrate a Project WET activity such as The Price is Right to get that understanding of water rates and the reason for needing to raise rates for construction projects. On the other hand, we have 841, One for All, and this helps El Pasoans understand the demands of water from the Rio Grande by different sectors. We have agriculture, we have municipalities, and we have recreation. Next. Next. Would you mind going back? I'm looking for one that says Educator Workshops. There we go. Awesome. Okay, so Educator Workshops. We offer Educator Workshops throughout the year to introduce Project WET curricula as another tool for educators to utilize regarding regional water issues in their own and special creative way. Offering workshops as a professional development offers that professional development opportunity and allows us to build those partnerships and train participants as co-facilitators with school districts, community stakeholders. We are very, very fortunate that the utility recognizes the value of these programs by sponsoring the purchasing of the guides. We do, however, also look into additional sponsors via grants or collaborative partnerships. We build a limited number of workshops per year in order to offer them for free. So we have to always budget a limited number so that way we could continue offering them to our regional educators. And another great tool that we utilize is our loaner activity kits. Our loaner activity kits are available for educators through a small returnable deposit. And what we do is that by choosing the most expensive activities out of the Project WET book, we are able to create a kit that provides all the materials you need. And educators are much more likely to implement these activities if everything's nicely placed in a box with all the materials for their classroom. All right, so El Paso Water currently offers educator programs such as Getting Little Feet Wet, Project WET, Wonders of Wetlands, and Healthy Water, Healthy People. All right, next. I'm looking for the Water Festival. Awesome. All right, so Water Festival is to celebrate the water, the value of water. All right, this is a part of our 2 signature events that we currently offer here in the community. The festival emphasizes the arts, culture, artistry, and local artists celebrating the theme, how water influences our lives. And this is a very popular festival because it helps really bring home and drive home the importance of, you know what, we live in a desert community. Water is very, very important to us. You know, especially if we plan on living here and sustaining the city, we need to be always looking at water conservation. All right, next. All right. All right, so because of our educational efforts, El Paso Water Conservation Program is leading a 35% reduction in daily per person water consumption. And to conclude my presentation, I am closing, well, actually, I actually had a video for you all. It had some testimonials from our most recent Getting Little Feet Wet workshop. However, at the very end of the webinar, you will receive a link to this video, and I highly encourage you to watch it. We have testimonials from educators, principals, administrators that have gone through our workshop and have absolutely fallen in love. What we have done differently with our workshops is we include not only the materials and the guides, but we've done something different. And for our educator workshops, we actually invite a small number of students. Can you just imagine educators attending a training and we ask them, all right, great, now let's put it to the test. Welcome all these little second graders that we can then demonstrate these activities with. And it's been very, very successful. All right, I'll go ahead and I'll pass it on to Jim.
Okay, April, thank you very much. And again, folks, look for that link. I'm sorry we couldn't put the video on, but look for that link at the end of the webinar. And I guess I'll just say one thing real quick that should be obvious. We really would like you to reach out certainly to all of the speakers today. If you're interested, this is all about, one of the reasons we do these webinars is to make people in the sector, if you will, the practitioners like yourselves, aware of other programs that are going on. So reach out to these folks, reach out to us here at EPA anytime, and really learn more about what's going on and replicate it or do what works best in your community. So again, April, thank you very much. That was a great presentation. Great work down there along the border. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So our final speaker today is Cindy Bushi. Again, if I mispronounce your name, Cindy, forgive me. But Cindy is the Environmental Education Manager with the City of Boise, Idaho. We're delighted to have you with us here, Cindy. I've been to Boise several times, a very nice city, a little on the dry side, not like El Paso, but certainly a growing city where this whole notion of environmental education across the city and certainly in conjunction with the utility is really, really important. So, Cindy, without further ado, I'll turn it over to you, and thanks again for being on the webinar.
Thank you, Jim. Thanks to the EPA Office of Wastewater and to Julia at Project WET for inviting me to be a presenter today. And so my name is Cindy Bush. I'm the Environmental Education Manager for the City of Boise. And our water renewal utility has a fantastic water education center called the Boise Watershed, in which we implement Project WET and other education programs to raise interest and awareness in water careers from kindergarten through college age students. And so you'll notice a few similarities between how April and I use Project WET. I'll try to focus a little more on what we're doing with teens and even college students in terms of internships. Next slide. Just as an overview for the City of Boise, our Public Works Department operates 2 water renewal facilities, as well as a phosphorus removal facility, a biosolids application farm, and we also maintain more than 950 miles of pipe in our city. And so we use the term water renewal facilities, but I am referring to wastewater treatment. It is a term that we are transitioning away from. We feel that water renewal offers the public better public perception and understanding of how the city recovers resources and treats our water for hopefully future reuse in our high desert climate. Next. Our most valuable asset, however, is our employees. We have about 250 Public Works employees, and a majority of those do work for our utility. In the Public Works Department, our employees have very diverse skill sets and talents, and most of which fall within the umbrella of STEM. So just to give you an example, we hire careers that are mechanics, operators, lab analysts, farmers, engineers, educators, just to name a few. And we recognize the need to attract people into these fields as early as elementary school. Thus, our utility has invested in environmental education to show our ratepayers and our young citizens the important work that's being done. And we utilize tours and Project WET activities to recruit our future workforce. Next slide. It all started in the 1990s and the early 2000s. We had many requests by local schools to tour our water renewal facilities. And at that time, our operators led the tours, which was challenging because it took them away from some of their responsibilities. Additionally, there wasn't consistent messaging from tour to tour. In the early 2000s, some of our city management had the opportunity to tour the Vancouver, Washington Water Education Center, and they were inspired to develop a similar center that would teach people of all ages about water before or after touring our water renewal facility. Thus, the Boise Watershed was envisioned to serve as the face of the utility and to educate citizens on water renewal, how the city recovers resources, and to develop interest in public works careers. Next. Just like El Paso's Water Center, we opened in 2008 as well in partnership with a nonprofit called Boise Watershed Exhibits Incorporated. They raised over $1 million from our community to fund the hands-on exhibits inside the education center. Some of those exhibits are pictured in the right-hand picture, and that is about half of our exhibit hall that you're seeing there. Our mission is to educate people of all ages about water protection and water conservation. Today, with a staff of 4 employees, we educate more than 28,000 people per year through on-site and off-site programs. Next. Well, we started out small in 2008, and our main audience was really school kids. We thought they would be in the 4th and 5th grade range based on their education standards, but it turned out that all ages came through our doors, preschool through college. And so where we began was looking at Project WET activities. I was fortunate enough to attend a Project WET workshop that was held locally. I received the curriculum guide, and that became the basis for tailoring our lessons to our audience. We started with 4 thematic lessons from the curriculum guide, one on watersheds, one on water conservation, another on water renewal engineering, and the other on water quality. And we were able to really tailor those lessons to our local Boise River watershed. So for example, one of the ones that's pictured front and center, you see the 3 boys. By the way, that is simulated wastewater, in case you were worried. The kids helped create that water to clean. And that activity is called Sparkling Water from the Project WET 1.0 guide. And essentially we tailored it to fit our water renewal facility processes. Another activity that is not pictured here helps us to meet our stormwater education NPDES permit requirements. And that is an activity called Sum of the Parts, where we introduce point source and non-point source pollution examples along the Boise River and give them some ideas for pollution prevention strategies. Plus, we are able to mention stormwater engineering careers throughout that lesson. Another popular lesson is a water quality field experience, and that is based on Project WET's Healthy Water, Healthy People guide. So we take students down to the Boise River and test the water quality above and below our effluent outfall. They also get a chance to conduct a macroinvertebrate assessment. You can see the bottom middle picture. One of the boys is picking up a rock and looking for macroinvertebrates. It's one thing to tell students about a career when you're standing in front of them in their classroom, but it's another thing to actually have them out in the river, physically connecting with the environment that we would like them to protect. And so it just makes our career interest much more appealing. For example, I have a student quote that I'd like to share that was from a thank you card. It said, "Dear Boise Watershed, I enjoyed going to the Boise River today. It was fun looking at bugs and working on computers. I really thought that I was a scientist. I wish I could go to the watershed every year. Sincerely, Sabina." I also want to point out too that all of the goals of our activities are to introduce students to the many facets of water and really instill environmental stewardship at a young age. And then as a bonus, we're able to introduce water careers and gain exposure to our water utility. So we oftentimes encourage students to return to the Boise watershed with their families to explore more about water and to tour the water renewal facility. Next slide. We have been using Project WET for many of our lessons and integrated throughout our center for many years, but it wasn't until 2017 that we officially became a host site for Project WET. And that allowed us to take on the role of leading teacher workshops. Oftentimes we'll host those at our location, and currently we reach about 200 teachers a year through these workshops. We can really augment our reach by teaching teachers the curriculum and giving them exposure to different water careers through those workshops. Oftentimes the workshops are 8 hours to 15 hours in length, so that gives us a deeper connection with those teachers and schools. We also utilize many partner agencies in our workshops, such as our drinking water utility operated by Suez and our state regulatory agency, the Idaho Department of Environmental Quality, and other community partners to give exposure to teachers of careers and different resources in our community. Next. We also utilize Project WET activities in our outreach at schools and community events. We serve as the face of the utility, and so we are able to take these activities out and reach children and adults with many different activities. I'd say that one of our most popular ones has been where we take a tub of PVC pipes, and then we also bring safety vests and hard hats, and young children can work together to put together a pipeline and then run a ball through those pipes. But while they are busy being STEM engineers, we are able to talk to their parents about the value of the water renewal utility and the miles of pipes, the need for asset replacement, what not to flush, et cetera, some of our community outreach goals. An event that I wanted to mention is in the bottom right corner. This is our annual Citizen Science event, and it's really a cornerstone event for the Boise watershed. We have a lot of partners on this event. It's DEQ, USGS, universities, and other neighboring cities, to name a few. And what we do is match up citizens with water professionals at sites along the Boise River to allow citizens to monitor the health of the Boise River at those locations. And during that event, each site leader is encouraged to share their career path with the participants. And finally, one other outreach program that we offer to schools specifically is featured in that bottom center picture, and that's our school water audit curriculum, which is based in Project WET. This is a 4-part program in which students estimate the amount of water used at their school and compare their estimate to utility bills, then make recommendations to their school on how to become more water efficient. And this program includes a mention of different water careers and options for the teacher to take their class on a tour of either the drinking water or the water renewal facilities. Next. It is sometimes difficult to measure the impact of reaching thousands of students a year in terms of who do we recruit and will they walk through our door someday? And so we have had the fortune of at least one success story within Public Works, and that is Toni Harmon, the gentleman featured here. He's our West Boise Water Renewal Operations Coordinator, and he came through our door several years ago and made sure that he came up to us at the Boise Watershed to say thank you. He had gone on a tour when he was in college and then participated in a Project WET activity after that tour. And it really inspired him to go into the career that he is in today. And so if you get a chance to watch the video after this presentation, it's really inspiring. You can tell he's really proud of his work, and happy to hear Toni's testimonial. Next slide. For the remainder of my presentation, I'm going to focus on how we recruit future workforce through our teens and our college student internship programs. And so I'll begin with our college internships. Since 2008, we have trained over 65 interns at our site. And so we recruit them from our local college, Boise State University, go Broncos, and also University of Idaho. And we provide the students with teaching opportunities as well as the option to tour or job shadow other careers within public works. The college students come from a variety of majors, many of them in geosciences, some in education or communication, but then a wide variety of STEM backgrounds as well. We have found that about half of our former interns go on to become classroom teachers, but the other half typically go into professional careers in the water industry. For example, 2 former interns last year, after shadowing our water quality sampling and monitoring team, gained employment in our water quality division. Additionally, we had 1 former intern become a stormwater analyst for one of our partner agencies. And I could probably go on and on listing a few highlights of those careers and their career paths, but I really just want to say that I believe that their internships at the Boise Watershed played a key role in solidifying their interest in their career and provided workforce skills that were transferable to their future employment. Next slide. Our most valuable internship program to us is through the Boise State University's I Do Teach program. And in case you're not familiar with I Do Teach, it's based upon a model called You Teach out of University of Texas, Austin. You Teach is available at 46 universities in 22 states. So that's something that may be near you and accessible. With the I Do Teach program, what's great is it trains undergraduates in STEM careers to concurrently receive their teaching certificate. And so at the end of their undergraduate program, they have a teaching certificate and a science or engineering degree. Each semester for the past 7 years, the Boise Watershed has been a host site for the I Do Teach interns, and they get paid by the university. They help us out by teaching more than 3,000 second grade students who come through our doors as part of a district-wide grade level field trip. The I Do Teach interns develop, learn, and teach 2 lessons about watersheds, the water cycle, and pollution prevention. And some of those lessons incorporate Project WET activities. Each lesson mentions the importance of scientists and engineers. In 2015, an I Do Teach instructor named Jan Smith conducted a study as part of her doctoral research. She wanted to assess the second grade student knowledge and interest in science and engineering careers before and after participating in a Boise Watershed field trip. Next. And so we were able to administer a pre and post visit survey to more than 500 students in 2015. The survey listed statements such as, I would like to become a scientist. And students responded to a Likert scale of 5 different smiley faces, from frown to big smile, representing the degree that they agree or disagree with the statement. It's probably the cutest survey I've ever seen. The statistically significant results showed that students gained knowledge and were more interested in science and engineering careers after a field trip. So to summarize, the successful outcomes of the I Do Teach internship program are that college students introduce and get students interested in STEM careers while also gaining skills toward their own career goals. Next. And finally, our newest program is a paid teen internship program called the Watershed Action Team. And this is based upon a volunteer program that we had for many years for teens to get engaged with us in the summer to lead and develop environmental education activities for visiting families to our facility. And so what we found kind of early on was that having teens as volunteers was somewhat successful, we had some difficulty getting consistent commitment and quality from them. And so just this past summer, we decided to pilot a paid teen internship program. The Watershed Action Team delivered. We had 8 students apply, and you can see them pictured. We hired all 8 of those in the main picture on the left. And they really did a great service for us by developing different programs that were unique just for that summer. We will plan to continue this program, and what I'd like to see in the future is us expand this program to include more interaction with some of our public works careers, and to also maybe expand this into a year-round program in the future. Next. So in conclusion, our kindergarten through college environmental education programs utilizing Project WET have been an effective tool in workforce development. Boise Watershed will continue to focus on providing students with positive experiences with STEM and exposure to careers in water to help recruit our future workforce. And I'll end with a plug that it's more important now than ever to educate students on environmental issues. We're excited that in the near future, we're moving toward incorporating climate change education into our mission. We'll be utilizing the Project WET climate lessons and other curriculum to educate citizens on climate solutions and green careers. So we're very excited about our future. Thank you. That concludes my presentation.
Okay, can people hear me?
We can hear you, Jim.
Okay, thank you, Cindy. That was a very nice presentation. I really admire kind of the soup to nuts approach you're taking out there in Boise, from kids at a very young age all the way up through, you know, people in college. It's quite impressive. And I know Boise is a fast-growing community, so I think your challenges are only going to get more significant. So great job. We really appreciate it. So now I'm going to turn it over to Sarah to basically field questions that we have gotten throughout the webinar and provide answers. Then we'll have some closing comments from my colleague, Henna Bate. So Sarah, over to you, please.
Thanks, Jim. So this is a reminder to those of you that held your questions. If you'd like us to read through your questions for the presenters, go ahead and submit those now. We've gotten in quite a few questions, some questions for all the presenters and some questions for specific presenters. So I will just go down the line. And the first question we have here is really for all the presenters. And Cindy, you touched on this in your presentation, but we have a participant that's interested in learning about work that WET does educating college-age students. So Cindy, I know you mentioned the programs in Idaho, but we're wondering if there are other programs for college-age students.
This is Julia. I'll try to tackle that. Yeah, I mean, honestly, our partners, you know, do run the whole gamut from pre-K all the way up through university. I would have to ask our partners to see who is doing college age programs. Obviously Cindy is. I don't know if there's any, I know there's a bunch of our partners on right now, and I don't know if they can put in the chat box to everybody what they're doing, but I can certainly put that out there, and then, you know, get you in touch, whoever asked that question, get you in touch with the appropriate people. So I guess to answer that, I would say contact me and we'll put you in touch with the people that are doing those, because the answer is yes, we are. I just don't have the names offhand.
Got it, thank you. And Julia, I have a follow-up question that I believe you touched on in your presentation, but are the educational programs available for the individuals? And if they are looking to know more about the curricula, where should they go to access those educational materials?
Yeah, so we do not discriminate who we train. So anybody can get trained. As I mentioned, you don't have to be a formal educator. It is available to anybody. And so what I would do, you can, of course, contact me, but probably a great place to start if you want to get trained is just to go to our website under where we are and look for the coordinator, the Project WET coordinator in your state. or close by to you, and we have one in every state. And then just see what they have coming up, or talk to them about what you're interested in, what they have available. If it's something that maybe there's several of you at your utility or at your organization that want to do this, they may be able to do a special one just for you all as well. So if you can't find what you're looking for, please just email me directly.
Got it. Thank you, Julia. And here I'm going to I have a question for April. So April, one of our participants is wondering how Mexico has handled their wastewater and water resources treatment, and how has that relationship developed and kind of what's involved? Is there any cross-border resource issues, and can you give us some information on how that's handled?
I wouldn't be able to answer for Mexico. However, we do host an annual conference. And that annual conference is called Two Waters, One Nation. So that way we could discuss any regional issues. But yes, we do meet once a year to discuss
that. April, you've gone out and we didn't catch the last part of your comment. So we heard about the annual conference, but then your voice cut out.
Yes, so every year we have Two Waters, One Nation, and what we do is we meet every year to discuss any type of regional water issues that may come up, and of course all of that is handled through our PSB board and TCEQ, but I would not be able to answer for Mexico how it is that they are handling their wastewater treatment.
Okay. Got it. Thanks, April. All right, I have a question for Cindy. Cindy, participants were interested to know about how the Boise Watershed Education Center was funded. One person interested in learning more about the private partner that helped with that funding, and if you could give us some more details.
Sure, I'd be happy to. The city partnered with a nonprofit that was formed specifically to raise money for the water exhibits, and they named themselves Boise Watershed Exhibits Incorporated. And so they do have a website if you want to look that up. They were an all volunteer board, and they pretty much single-handedly raised $1 million from our community through a variety of grants and individual donations and community donations. And then the city's portion was $2 million in the construction of our facility, which is in the same footprint as our old laboratory building. And so it just so coincided with a tear down of our lab and a rebuild of our lab on site.
Got it. Thanks, Cindy. All right, Julia, question for you. Regarding the Train the Trainer educators, we have a participant who's interested in learning more. Are those just for people in the industry, or can anyone get training? And finally, is that a formal job?
I like that last part. That's great. It is for anybody. It's for anybody that wants to be a trainer. We consider anybody who educates an educator. So again, you don't have to be in the education sector. In fact, a lot of our trainers, we call them facilitators, work for government organizations where it's a priority to train educators. So yeah, you certainly you can come from any background. You would need to talk to your local project WET coordinator about that and see when they are offering training or facilitator trainings. And in terms of a formal job, no, it's not a paid job. Our partners all operate very differently. Some are able to offer stipends for facilitators, but the majority actually rely on facilitators who have that as part of their it is part of their job to do educational trainings. So it's usually not something that's hired out. But again, contact your local coordinator to find out more about that.
Got it. Thank you. All right, turning back to Cindy. Cindy, lots of interest in some of the college age programs that you discussed. And we have one person wanting to know if there are internships with other universities or if the program is really for that local university that you touched on.
We have had limited success with trying to recruit from a couple of our local colleges. So we have Treasure Valley Community College about an hour away from us. And we did recruit one intern from there once. And College of Western Idaho, our other local university about 40 minutes away, kind of similar. We've had limited success, and mostly because of the distance and driving that it would take for someone to get over here. And then in the summertime, we've been able to work with other universities across our state. So University of Idaho and Idaho State University have both sent students just for the summer for paid internships. So that seems to be a good model to continue in the future.
Thanks, Cindy. And another question. If someone is interested in learning about the I Do Teach in their area, is there a specific website that they can go to?
There is, and I just attempted to enter that in the answer queue. So hopefully you can see there's a URL that I entered there. But if you type in You Teach, all as one word, it should pop up, and there's a map that's searchable by state.
Got it, thank you. All right, April, question from a participant, wondering how the Tech H2O Learning Center was funded.
Okay, the Tech H2O Center is funded by taxpayers. Because we are part of the city of El Paso, whenever a customer is paying their water bill, essentially a portion of that is saved for our water conservation education program.
Got it, thank you. All right, I'm gonna do one final question before we move into a poll, and then we have some time after the poll to ask some additional questions. But Julia, this question came in from a participant wondering how they can access or learn more about customized programs for employee engagement with WET.
Yeah, great question. Please just contact me. It's better to just have a conversation about that. So again, we want to be able to customize the program for you. So we really want to know exactly what your needs are, what you're looking for. If you are looking for any sort of employee engagement or customized program, the best thing to do is just to get in touch with me, and we can talk to you more about your needs.
Got it. Thanks, Julia. All right, so as I mentioned, we're going to move into a closing poll. And this poll is going to be on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the best and 1 being the worst. How would you rate today's webinar? We're always trying to improve our webinars, so please let us know what you think. And I will leave that open for another moment. And in the meantime, while individuals are answering that poll, Julia, I had another question that's related to the one that you just answered. But someone was wondering if there's any recommendations for providing development education for current water industry employees. And if you have any recommendations, or if you would like them to get in contact with you directly.
So developing water education for current employees, is that what the question was?
Correct.
Yeah, you know, you can get in touch with me and we can kind of figure out if it's something more customized. But you know, you can use our activities with your employees. So even though, you know, we say we're talking about K through 12 and college education here a lot, it's certainly, these activities can be used with adults just as easily. And you know, when we do our educator trainings, we are educating adults. A lot of the people that come in are uncertain about teaching about these topics. So they are learning as they also learn how to teach them. So, you know, it is something where you can attend a Project WET training and learn how to do that. But if you have further questions or want more specifics, you know, definitely just, I'm here to answer any questions. Reach out to me anytime and we can talk more about it.
Thanks, Julia. All right, Cindy, back to you. Another question coming in, wondering if you can provide more information on who pays for the teen internships.
Great. That is actually just through our Public Works Water Renewal Fund. So they are the ones, essentially the sewer ratepayers that are paying for our operation and maintenance of our education facility. So the teen interns, we work with our HR department, and they help with our recruiting and interviewing and selection.
Got it. Thank you. All right. Another question coming in. I believe it's for Julia, but anyone can feel free to jump in. Are there any costs associated with participating in Project WET activities?
That totally depends on where you live. As both Cindy and April mentioned, you know, they are able to build in their educational activities and their trainings as part of their budget. So you guys can correct me if I'm wrong and I heard that wrong, but I know at least April said that they're able to offer those workshops for free, which means that there is not a cost associated to attend it. But some of our partners, you know, just depends on who our partner is. We have partners that are nonprofits, partners that are universities, museums, and so some of them do have to charge for workshops, in which case, you know, there's usually like a $20 to $50 fee to attend, and that includes the training, lunch, and getting the guide is usually how that works. So it really depends. You'd have to contact your local coordinator about that. And, you know, if you have, sometimes it's a matter of just, if you want to put on your own workshop, you can contact the coordinator, and they can, if they have funds, they can do it. If not, you know, if you can scrounge up enough funds to produce that workshop, then they can put on a specialized workshop for you as well. In terms of customizing materials, of course, there is a cost associated with that, and we would work directly with you if there's something that you would like customized. But hopefully that answers the question. It's not as simple as yes or no.
Got it. Thanks, Julia. And I would just note for that participant, if that did not fully answer the question, or if any of these answers you're left wanting more information, please do feel free to contact the presenters directly. And those links, as we mentioned, will be shared with everyone in the slide deck. So you will have contact information for the speakers that you're hearing today. Julia, next question here. And actually, this might be for all of you, but I'll turn to Julia first. Have there been any efforts to connect students more directly to jobs in water and wastewater? And if so, what does this look like?
You know, I am going to actually turn this over to Cindy and April, and I kind of wish our other partners, if they're still on, maybe want to put in the chat box to all attendees. Because there have been, and you know, it's really our partners on the ground that are doing this. And so Cindy and April were able to share their experiences today, and I showed you a couple other examples, but the best thing to do is to really talk to the people that are doing it. So Cindy, April, do either of you want to specifically address that?
Sure, this is Cindy. Beyond our programming and internships, I'd say we don't work too much with connecting elementary kids directly with those careers. That's mostly because of liability reasons. However, I'd say through any requests that come in from middle school or high school students, we do match them up with anyone that they are trying to meet with. So for example, we'll sometimes get a question from a high school student who's doing a research project and wants to meet specifically with an operator. And so we'll help them make that connection and get to a point person to be able to meet with. And then additionally, we've been doing a lot of the outreach in the community and into classrooms in terms of career presentations. Once in a while, we'll bring along an engineer or an operator with us, but that's pretty rare.
Got it. Thank you. All right. Given the time on the webinar, I'm going to go ahead and ask the final question. Not the final question, but a final question. And if you are listening in on the line and you have more questions for the presenters, again, as I mentioned, those contact details are included in the slide deck that we will be distributing after this webinar. So a final question here for you, Cindy. You talked about some of the starts and stops with the teen internship programs, and we have a participant wondering about when you're recruiting talent, have you found any characteristics particularly needed or attractive for potential new hires?
Oh, that's a great question. So for our teen program, we have found that very few teens have held a summer job yet in their career. And so we're just looking for someone who's open-minded, ability to work well with others. And specifically, we have them interacting with a lot of children of all different ages. And so we just want them to be comfortable working around children. And we've actually had some success in partnering with our Parks and Recreation Department and looking at how to recruit a more diverse teen pool. And this summer, or actually this spring, we're going to be reaching out to our teen program, specifically at one of our Parks and Recreation community centers to do just that. Now, hopefully that helps answer that question.
Yes, thank you very much. All right. Now I'm going to navigate us over to the final poll, and then I will turn to Hannah Abate over at the EPA for final remarks. But for this poll, we're looking for you to actually just type in your answer in the Q&A box. And the question is, finally, what other topics would you like to see covered in subsequent webinars? So if you have any topics that you feel are particularly relevant for you and your context, go ahead and type those into the Q&A box, and you'll be able to do that until the end of the webinar. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Hannah Abate at the EPA.
Thank you to Julia, April, and Sydney for providing us with all these great examples of how partners are able to collaborate, and we will continue to encourage the importance of collaboration and early engagement between water utilities and the communities they serve. Thank you.
All right, thanks to everyone for joining today's webinar. Sorry, did somebody want to come in with a final thought? Okay, thanks to all of our participants and our speakers, and we will let you know about our upcoming webinars. Have a nice day, everyone.